I stayed in the office until 9 p.m. because I felt like I just wanted to prove that I had done a good job.
Inherently, I don't belong because of my race and then my financial background.
I feel like imposter syndrome is a little bit more gendered.
Let someone else tell you no. Don't tell yourself no.
If you have imposter syndrome, it means that you're not going to be overconfident and cocky. Hello, soju shotties. Welcome back.
That's what you want to say?
Do you have a better intro than that?
Hello to all the soju shotties.
Oh, he's serenading us.
And welcome back to
Soju with Sarah.
Yeah.
James is really good at singing.
I'm not. She always says that in front of people, and then they're like, "Oh my god, we can't wait to hear my karaoke." And then I go, "Pogoshita," or something like that, and then they're like, "Oh my god, what were they talking about?"
Love has blinded me from all your flaws.
You set me up to fail, honestly. I'm not even that good at singing at all, and then she sets people up to
I always love to overly compliment him in front of people, and then when it comes time for him to prove himself, yeah, that's where it goes south. But before, everyone thinks very highly.
Yeah. But that's like saying, let's say you tell someone that hasn't met me yet, like, yeah, he's 6'3" or something.
Well, that's just a lie.
Yeah.
Because you're 7 foot.
Oh, no, I'm
Sorry.
8 feet tall.
Forgot that extra foot.
Well, welcome back to another episode. Today, I am going to try to drive the conversation a little more today. So bear with me, please. Be kind to me. Be gentle. I guess before we get into the topic today, we should do a quick outfit check as we have been doing.
Yeah.
Actually, before we do that, I always say this at the end of each episode, but I want to say it up front because I think it's important. Please like and rate us and leave a comment, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leave a comment, subscribe on YouTube. All of these things really help with our discovery and our reach and really helps the podcast. So if you enjoy listening to us, it is a really big support if you can do that. So thank you. And that's the blurb for now.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. So the theme of today's episode is imposter syndrome and feeling like you don't belong.
Wait, we totally skipped past the outfit check and the drink of the day.
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry. Let's do our outfit checks. Do you want to start first?
So ever since we started doing this, I've been trying to look a little bit more presentable than just my sweats, which I started off just wearing.
This whole thing is me gaslighting you into dressing better.
So I have this top, this sheer mesh top that I thrifted, and then this pair of pleated pants from Love Bonito. The issue with this type of podcast, though, is you can never tell what I'm wearing on the bottom. It's just literally the top. The top has to look nice, and then the bottom just looks like this.
Just leave it to the imagination. What socks do you have on?
I have these Adidas socks. Socks. What are you wearing?
I like how you said it the European way, by the way.
What?
Adidas?
No, that was actually, I was imitating how my aunt says it.
Oh, but that's how the rest of the world says it.
Oh, really?
'Cause the US says Adidas.
Yeah.
And then everyone else in the world says Adidas. Because it's German.
Oh.
Say Adidas.
Oh.
And then Nike here is Nike, but then in the other parts of the world they call it Nike.
Oh, I've heard that one.
Yeah. Today I am wearing my Uniqlo socks as usual. I have
Are you just like sponsored by Uniqlo socks? Because
please sponsor me, Uniqlo.
Every single time.
No, they have great socks, and I think people who know that, they really know it. The pants that I have on today are the Adder Eravasi trousers. Really nice. I've been wearing these a lot. I have on just a basic white tee, and then I have this bandana that I've been stealing from Sarah.
And for the drink of today, we are drinking a strawberry basil drink from Neat. It is a soju cocktail.
Soju cocktail.
Cheers.
And before we proceed, just let us know in the comments whose outfit you prefer, mine or Sarah's. We do love having these little mini competitions and debates each episode, so just let us know what you guys think. All right, shall we get into the episode?
All right, let's do it.
So the theme of today's episode is imposter syndrome and feeling like you don't belong. Let's try to define it first before going into the topic. So people who struggle with imposter syndrome believe that they are undeserving of their achievements and the high esteem in which they are in fact generally held. They feel that they aren't as competent or intelligent or as XYZ as others might think, and that soon enough people will discover the truth about them. And so I think especially when you are trying to progress as a person, I'm reading off my phone so I just speak better. I think especially when you're trying to progress as a person and in your career, you find yourselves in rooms where you're less confident that you should be there. And this feeling can stem from a lot of different things, like your socioeconomic background, your gender, your race, all these different things. But it also fits into a larger feeling that I think a lot of people have felt in their lives, which is just generally feeling like you don't belong, especially socially too.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about our experiences with not only imposter syndrome, but just generally feeling like you don't fully belong in certain spaces. So strap in, get a drink, get comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Hold hands with that special someone as we have our discussion on imposter syndrome. Hold hands with someone like we are.
Thank you for the riveting definition of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope it's riveting. Yeah, I'm so glad.
We actually wanted to talk about this topic because we got a few questions after our confidence episode, because I feel like imposter syndrome and confidence go kind of hand in hand, but questions to talk about imposter syndrome. And I actually made a vlog about this once where I kind of briefly surfaced the topic, but never really dived in. And I feel like I always have a lot to say about imposter syndrome because I've experienced it in like so many different facets of my life that I think it's just a wonderful topic to broach. So yeah, I'm excited to jump in.
I thought this episode was about playing Among Us. That's imposter, right?
That's the intermission.
Oh, we're gonna play Among Us.
Oh, I totally forgot that imposter was in Among Us.
Yeah.
So James and I were actually talking about imposter syndrome earlier today, and we realized there's like different categories that you can kind of break imposter syndrome into, which I think is just how we're going to structure this video. On a high level, before we jump into everything, it is financial imposter syndrome, so any sort of socioeconomic experience where you feel like you're not deserving of a certain status comparing to other people in like different wealth brackets,
or even just like being friends with people who are in those wealth brackets. You feel like you don't belong there.
Then there's cultural, which is a new type of imposter syndrome that we realize we kind of have experienced. Professional imposter syndrome in a workspace, lifestyle imposter syndrome in social context and being around people with different lifestyles and different social circles. And then finally, imposter syndrome in content creation, because we both are also content creators and there's a lot to break down. Before we get into all of that, I think we could talk a little bit about our own personal background and experience in imposter syndrome. I wanted to dive into why we feel like we have imposter syndrome. Maybe we can jump all the way to like our core in our childhood, but do you feel like you have had any imposter syndrome growing up as a kid?
Yeah, I think I definitely experienced imposter syndrome as a kid in two different ways. One was the financial aspect of it. I think a lot of people, especially like, I don't know if I've mentioned this, I went to like a private Christian school. Nothing fancy. We were like on scholarship for that, but a lot of the kids around me, not all of them are like rich, but they at least were like upper middle class.
Yeah.
And so I definitely felt pretty like, I don't know, out of place there a lot of the time, especially like when you're doing like car pickup. And then like my parents are coming up in this like beat up van or like a beat up like 1992 like Volvo. We'd like open the trunk to like put in our backpacks, and then my parents have like cleaning supplies in there because they used to like clean houses. And it's just like a feeling of I'm just so out of place here. And then this is like I'm like an 8-year-old. I guess that was maybe one of the earliest times of like imposter syndrome that I felt in the past. Like, oh, do I like belong at this school? Like, all these kids are like more well off. They have like these nice SUVs. This girl's mom drives like a Corvette, like these things. And then I think culturally too, I felt really out of place in that context. I grew up in the South basically, so I lived in Florida, close to Alabama, with a lot of white people, and so I was like one of the only minorities in my school. And so I did feel a lot of just being out of place, I guess, not feeling like I was really belonging there because I was just so different. I was like the one Asian kid among all these white kids who a lot of the time, like they have like a lot of like heritage from that area. Like they have generations of family from Florida and Alabama. So I think those are the main like big ways that I felt imposter syndrome as a kid.
Yeah. I think we talk about being like low income a lot. I do think the reason that is true is because a lot of like the topics we broach, they stem from our childhood experiences growing up low income. So I think I have a similar shared experience. But I guess the question that I have for you is, do you think imposter syndrome stems from parenting styles? Because in my childhood, I was taught a lot of humility. And I wonder if sometimes my self-worth was a little bit watered down because I was taught to be just really humble all the time and not talk about accomplishments and things like that.
It's a really good question. I think my experience with it was not that the parenting that my parents gave me contributed more to the imposter syndrome, but the lack of a certain like emphasis on making sure that I feel like I'm worthy or that I belong somewhere is the reason that I like felt that way, because of my environment. So like I mentioned, like my environment was very like conducive to me feeling like inherently I don't belong because of my race and then my financial background. I think what a really good parenting style is in that type of environment is to like make sure that you're emphasizing to them that they have self-worth, they need to like be self-confident, they do belong in these spaces. And I think when you don't do that, not to like discredit any parents in these situations, I think the lack of like positive reinforcement on that aspect can contribute to like you feeling more like you don't belong if you are in those types of environments. If you're maybe in like, I don't know, more diverse area with people who are more like you, it may not turn out like that because you just don't need to parent like that. But I think in my situation, that is how it ended up.
On the topic of parenting, I think I saw somewhere some analysis of like Emma Chamberlain, and they were saying that her parents probably raised her to be very confident and to not really like feed into the narrative of imposter syndrome based on how she's able to like acclimate to different situations with celebrities, with like just like a higher standard of living, that like she seems really comfortable being in different situations. And also being unabashedly herself, like being willing to have opinions and speak out and like say things without fearing it. Because even when we film this podcast, I feel like we have a level of filtering because we're worried we're going to say something wrong. But then I feel like when it comes to being raised a certain way where you're not scared to say whatever's on your mind, that's a good indicator on not having as much imposter syndrome. So I guess my question is, what are the ways do you think imposter syndrome manifests? Because one that I just mentioned is like when you have imposter syndrome, you're scared to say what's on your mind. You're scared to be shamelessly yourself. You kind of withhold a big part of yourself to other people.
Before moving on, I wanted to also ask you what your opinion is on parenting styles and how they affected your experience with imposter syndrome.
I think imposter syndrome comes from childhood. Like, I think you form habits that make you more prone to having imposter syndrome than other habits. I also don't think my parents did anything. I think they raised me really well. But I do think the one aspect where maybe I have more imposter syndrome nowadays is just that I was raised with a lot of humility. My parents would obviously like gloat about my accomplishments to other people, but they would never really like celebrate wins the way that we celebrate wins nowadays. I think I mentioned this in another episode, but even when like one of us posts, we say congrats on posting. And I think in like maybe an Asian household, you're not really like told congrats on X, Y, and Z all the time. If it's a big thing, like when I got into college, it was, yes, congrats on getting into Princeton. But then all the small things like, oh, congrats on straight A's, congrats on like this and that, I don't think really get acknowledged as much. And so when you don't celebrate your wins, I think you also don't realize the good things that you do in life, like the great, wonderful accomplishments you've made. And I think especially because my parents always taught me to be humble, I was always taught to just kind of neutralize any wonderful parts of myself. And it wasn't anything, like it wasn't my parents' fault at all, because in Chinese culture, I think being humble is like a good characteristic and like it's really graceful to be humble. However, I think on the flip side, I wasn't really taught how to be confident in like what I was excelling in and doing well as a kid. I think that's where some of it might stem from, but on a parenting front, I just feel like any personality quirks or anything that you have as an adult probably do stem from some amount of like parenting and childhood experience or trauma. So I think that's my answer.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting. I think the aspect of like humility, there's like a fine line between being humble, which is good, but then like putting yourself beneath other people. I think that distinction isn't really taught well. And honestly, probably because most people don't really know the distinction themselves either.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that too within the context of like religion, because I grew up in the church.
Oh, yeah.
And in the church, they really stress being humble is like really important. That's like a huge stressing point from the Bible. But I think what that did for me is like I equated that with having to be humble like too much and just like putting myself beneath other people. But one thing I should credit my dad with that I just thought of is during like church, there would be like a section in the middle where it'd be more of like the community time a little bit, and it'd be like, does anyone have any announcements or things they'd want to like mention? we used to do like piano competitions, or like I did like a spelling bee and I like won the spelling bee. During those times, my dad would like stand up in his broken English and he'd be like, my son got first place in the piano competition.
Aww.
And I'd be so embarrassed. I'd be
That's
like,
so
Dad,
cute.
why are you like bringing attention to this?
Yeah.
Especially because I felt all their like eyes on me, and like I felt like they were kind of like side-eyeing us for like bragging or gloating. I didn't internalize it at the time as like I don't know if people heard that, but Moose just went it's really cute. Where was I didn't internalize my dad like bragging about us publicly as being proud of ourselves and like making sure that we recognize our worth. But now that I think back on it, it was actually a really like proud display as for himself as a dad, for his family, to be like, we are doing really cool things. I think my dad was our family was looked down for a long time in our church because we were like immigrants. We were the only Asians there. We were like poor compared to other people. So I think he was really like adamant about like, no, you need to like respect us. I'm gonna like be an advocate for our family. So I do want to shout him out about that.
Oh, that's lovely. Actually, now that you say that, it's not like my parents didn't like gloat about things that I did. I think it's just internally that like they don't want me to be the one that tells people about the great things that I did. But I think my mom and my dad would always be proud if I did something great. And they would talk to like my other family members or their friends about the things that I did. You know, like if I won any award for my art or anything like that, they would tell other people. But it's just more on a other people facing front that they didn't want me to come off as like I'm bragging about myself.
Oh, maybe that's the pitfall of Asian parenting, is like they'll gloat to other people and brag about you to other people.
Oh, but they won't do it to you.
They won't do it to you, and they won't like include you in that.
Yeah.
Basically, like the centering is not you, it's like other people. But I guess like what would be important for the self-confidence and like self-worth aspect is just like making the kid feel like they did something really good.
I don't know. We have a lot of discussions nowadays because we're approaching the time where we have to think about family. And so we think about parenting a lot and like everything in the perspective of parenting, and if we're doing things right and if we want to be good parents, what should we do?
Yeah, I remember like growing up as a kid, I always had those things like, I'm never gonna do what my mom and dad just did to me.
Oh yeah, it's like I would never restrict my kids from having chicken nuggets.
Yeah. There's like random little things where you're like, I'm never gonna do this for my kid. I'm always gonna make sure I like do this or that my parents didn't do. I wish I had written those down in one spot so that I just can look back and know what those things were. I bet a lot of them were stupid.
They're so ridiculous, probably.
Yeah, they're probably so dumb and like
it's like no bedtimes.
Yeah, but I just wonder what those things were because I don't remember any of it. So I just know I'm just gonna like probably repeat a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, I just remember I used to get mad at my parents for ridiculous things that I felt like was valid. But for example, early bedtime, it makes so much sense. Of course I'm gonna make my kid go to bed early.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna let them stay up till midnight.
Yeah. And also I feel like the answer from parents, because I said so, I think it is valid a lot of the time. Like,
really?
Why do you as a kid need to know every single reason why? You know what I mean? It's like sometimes the parent just has a reason.
Yeah.
No, not withhold. It's just like, sometimes do they really need to explain themselves every time?
But then that teaches the kid to just take people at their word, which you shouldn't always do.
No, I know, but yeah, I know. I'm just saying, you know, like maybe you're like really exhausted from the workday and your kid's asking you for something dumb. I don't want to have to explain everything all the time. I mean, I will do it for the betterment of the kid, but I'm just empathizing with parents.
Going into the cultural topic a little bit, because you mentioned earlier that there's like a cultural difference you experienced growing up too. Do you feel like that has continued? So like after you left your hometown and went to college, was there a cultural imposter syndrome that you felt? Because college was very different.
I think I've struggled with cultural imposter syndrome a lot of my life. I mentioned I grew up in the American South, which is like a lot of white people where I'm from, at least. There's more like Koreans in like Atlanta, but where I'm from, like very few are there. And so back then, the cultural imposter syndrome was just like, I just don't fit in with all the white people here. I got along with a lot of people. I still had a lot of friends and friends that I still talk to this day. But I definitely didn't feel like I belonged there because I was just so different. My dad was a pastor. We were lower income. We were like really serious about like piano and like all these different things that my friends weren't really clued in on as much. And so that definitely contributed. But as I moved into college, the cultural imposter syndrome flipped. It was like in that environment, I wasn't white enough. And then in the new environment, I wasn't Asian enough or Korean enough. At least that's how I felt.
Oh, yeah. Because you were actually plugged into a lot of like Korean communities. You did Korean Student Association, right?
Yeah, I was in the Korean American Students Association, and I was in like a Christian fellowship, which was a lot of like Asians, especially Koreans. So coming into the school that we went to, it's about 20% Asian, which to me was insane. I was like, this is the most amount of Asians I've ever been around.
It felt like more. Like for some reason, I feel like a lot of the people I was interacting with was Asian. Like it felt like 50% Asian for me.
Yeah, our class size is like 1,500, so whatever 20% of that is, plus other classes that we knew. But it was shocking to me when I met people from like Jersey or California who were like, this isn't very many Asians at all. Like from where I'm from, it's like all Asians. So this is like weird coming from me. Or for them, it was weird because their cultural shock was like being around more diverse people outside of just Asians. To make a long story a little bit shorter, the feeling of like not being Asian enough happened when I got to college. I think especially it was like the Korean aspect of it. When I was around other Korean people, I'd be like, oh yeah, my Korean's bad, or like...
Oh, you still say that?
Do I still say that?
Yeah, you still tell people your Korean's not that good.
Oh, I just say it's not amazing because I don't use it often enough to feel super confident anymore because I'm just out of practice. So that's why I say that.
But then when I'm with James's like friends in Korea, like actual Koreans, they say that his Korean's like perfect Korean.
I think I don't have an accent, but if you talk to me long enough, like you can really tell I'm not from there. But yeah, initially I think when I talk to people in Korea, it's fine. I sound relatively fluent. But yeah, when I first got to college, I was like, my Korean sucks. Like that's what I would tell people, and I just would feel like I don't know. There's like those Koreans who just mix in Korean with their English.
Oh yeah.
I would feel like really awkward about that for some reason, even though I'm capable of it and I speak just as well as they do. But
you're just not used to it. Like when
I'm not used to it. Even today, when I am around Korean friends, sometimes I do feel like I want to use Korean with them, but then I just can't break that barrier for some reason, and it just feels really weird. But I think for a while I did feel not super Korean. But what helped was I took some Korean language classes at college too. So I got a lot better at Korean through that. I learned how to like essay write. I got to like more advanced Korean levels there. More recently in my adult life, I've been able to like travel to Korea because back then we couldn't like afford it. But now that we have a little more leeway with financial stuff, like we've been able to visit Korea more. And so I think I've been able to overcome that hump. And just through, being with you and experiencing even just like Chinese culture and food.
Oh yeah.
Like you introduced me to like hot pot and even just like pho and all these different like Asian cuisines.
Oh my God, this boy, I cannot believe when I first started dating him, he hadn't had most of the like staple Asian cuisines. Hot pot is so good. I cannot believe you went like 20 years without it.
Yeah, even like Korean foods, I've had like the obvious Korean foods, but some of them I just don't really know the names, or I haven't really had it because I don't know, my mom was the only person who could cook Korean food around us. So even that I was lacking in, but then I got to college and I was just was made grossly how much I was unaware of like different Chinese foods and things like that. My conception of Chinese food was like general, so like Panda sesame Express, chicken, that type of food basically. But yeah, I think over time, just because I've just had a lot more Asian friends in college, and as I've grown into adulthood, I don't feel any sort of imposter syndrome anymore culturally.
Yeah.
Except maybe sometimes I feel like I want to be more Korean, but I just don't get enough time or space to like practice that or watch Korean shows or practice my language skills. So,
do you think one solution, because it sounds like having exposure to your Korean culture a lot more and other people in the same culture helped you break out of the feeling of you don't belong in these spaces? Do you feel like exposure is one solution to imposter syndrome, or do you think it still requires a lot more work to break the feeling of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think I think it is an exposure thing, whether that's through friendships, like social life. I've heard especially like adoptee Koreans, once they're in their adulthood and want to connect more with their like roots, their cultural roots, they like to make more Korean friends.
Yeah.
And I've heard that does help. I mean, it depends. Sometimes Koreans are really exclusive with how they are socially, but I think it does help to have friends in that culture to like start feeling like you're more worthy of being there. And then I think just consuming more of the culture, like TVs, music, and then like obviously visiting the country would help. So I think it is exposure.
On top of exposure, that just made me think of something, because I was thinking about in a work context, I've always had a lot of imposter syndrome, whether it's in my main line of work, corporate work, like computer science, or my side work, which is being a content creator. I feel like being in the right spaces really, really help, because I remember I had a lot of imposter syndrome on my first team because I was working with a lot of very senior engineers, and I always felt like I needed to overwork myself to kind of like prove that I was deserving to be on the team, that I had actual output compared to these people that had been like doing this job for 10 plus years, while me being on the sidelines, having done it for a year, I still felt like I had to match what they were doing. But then when I switched teams to my current team, which I absolutely loved everyone on the team, not that I didn't love it, I loved everyone on the first team too, but this new team, everyone was kind of on the same playing field. And I felt like the environment was a lot more, or a lot less rigorous, because everyone still felt like they were new at something. So like environment shifted. I was around people that felt very similar to me, and I felt like I could acclimate to the environment a little bit more. But I still do have imposter syndrome, but I felt like this sense of like seniority imposter syndrome went away after I left the environment that where I was around a lot more senior people, and I entered this environment where it was more people like me.
Yeah, so maybe what you're saying is like imposter syndrome can also depend on what environments you're putting yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're really feeling like an imposter in certain situations, maybe it's a sign that it's not a good not the right environment for you.
Yeah.
And maybe a different environment would be more helpful. Obviously, like you should be uncomfortable sometimes to grow, but this is a different type of situation, I think.
Yes, I agree. There are certain situations where if you can change the environment you're around, it actually helps you to get out of imposter syndrome. That's my hot take.
Yeah, it's like you need to be in the right situation to grow better.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like we're transitioning more into the professional side of things, like the professional imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I think a lot of imposter syndrome, like I mentioned in the kind of intro, is related to your identity, whether that's like socioeconomic background, which we just talked about a lot, but also the gender aspect.
Yeah.
And you are a girl software engineer in a heavily male dominated space.
I'm a woman. Excuse you.
You're a woman software engineer in a heavily male dominated space.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you feel like being a woman has contributed a lot to any feelings of like you not belonging or not being good enough. Because I also know in your YouTube videos, there are some mean people who are like, oh, diversity hire, or like, oh, just another girl just like hanging out at the office, not like doing work or not being deserving of stuff. Do you feel like
mean men?
Yeah. Mean men, that's who they are.
Yeah.
But do you feel like as a woman that has caused a lot more of that imposter syndrome to come out in your professional working life?
Yes. As a woman in tech, I feel like inevitably you will feel some amount of imposter syndrome. There are microaggressions that other women have experienced that I'm grateful that I haven't really actively experienced before. But online, definitely a lot of people do come for me for being a woman in tech, which I've always kind of resented being in that position. But I do have a hot take, which I think is in the professional space. I feel like imposter syndrome is a little bit more gendered, because I think women tend to bear the burden of imposter syndrome a lot more than men. Most of the time when I've talked about imposter syndrome in a work context, it's always been with my female friends. I don't think I've ever talked to a male friend about feeling like they don't belong in a work environment. And I wonder if it's one, because obviously there's like a gap in terms of how many female hires there are versus male hires in the tech space. But then two, I wonder if it's just the nature of the work that as women, we feel like we're not as equipped to do, because tech is a very like masculine industry. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's unsexy.
It's unsexy.
Yeah.
And as a woman, I feel like when we do something that is traditionally like a male line of work, it's almost like we have to like work twice as hard to reap the same amount of like reward.
It's not like it. I think it is it.
Yeah, it's like, it's almost as if we are put on the same project, I constantly feel like I need to be outputting twice as much. Maybe not on my current team, but the overall feeling I've had in my career through my internships and everything has always been that I need to work harder to prove myself. Going back to like when I was an intern, I remember on my last day of working, I had finished my project, but there was some extra stuff that I could have done and, you know, some stretch goals. And I stayed in the office until 9 p.m. because I felt like I just wanted to prove that I had done a good job on the internship. Even though I already had gotten my feedback from my manager and everything was great, I still felt like I needed to do more. And I feel like that feeling of I need to always be doing more to prove my self-worth and my worth in this career has followed me throughout my career, because even in my first few years as a software engineer, I was always working overtime, always working until 7, until 10, and a lot my first team as well, because they were heavy overworkers. But then recently, this feeling of imposter syndrome came over me again, because my manager had mentioned the topic of promotion. And I realized I had been resisting a lot of discussion around promotion because I personally just felt like I didn't deserve it yet. And I knew that promotion's been on the horizon for me, but I always felt like I wasn't ready because I wasn't doing enough. And I realized that the reason I had been the one withholding myself from that discussion. And when it came time to talking about the actionables of getting promoted, I also realized that I felt unequipped to get the final promotion. And so I realized I still hold a lot of imposter syndrome, but it's a little bit more like deeper within myself. On the topic of promotion, I think I just came home and like reflected on all the things that I've done in my career up until this point. And I kind of went through all the accomplishments I had. I hosted these interns. I helped launch this like big project on our team. I've been driving like this other big project on our team. And then it just made me realize that I really undermine a lot of my accomplishments because there's this giant cloud above everything that somehow reigns over my accomplishments. And so that's what imposter syndrome feels like to me in the workspace. So I don't think I have like a bulletproof way of really, really getting out of imposter syndrome, but I do think doing the work of positive self-talk is always great. But I'm curious, because you're a male, if you've ever felt imposter syndrome in a workspace.
I think not in the way that you have, because of what you just described. Like, men just generally are okay, I think, getting stuff that they don't quote unquote deserve. They just kind of take it as given a lot of the time. Obviously, that's generalizing.
Not all men, but yeah.
Not all men.
I've noticed some men do.
Not all men, but I think men are more comfortable doing that, generally speaking. Yeah. But as you were talking, I just kind of realized one area where that did apply really heavily. Relating to this point, I think one way to be a good partner to someone who might have imposter syndrome is recognizing that they are kind of counting themselves out of something that they should be like putting their hat in the ring for. I feel like that's a lot of like weird analogies that I hate.
For some reason, I understood everything.
Counting yourself out while you put your hat in the ring and then you do the hokey pokey. So what I wanted to say is, if you are a partner to someone, aka you're dating someone basically, one really good thing you can do is you can kind of push them to like understand that they are worth more and worthy of the things that they should be pursuing. So they should be going up for the promotion. They should be pursuing the new job that they don't feel they're worthy of. And I say this because Sarah here has been a really good girlfriend in that context, relating to my point of imposter syndrome. Before, when I used to like apply for jobs, I used to count myself out of positions that felt like they were not attainable for me, or that I didn't qualify for. So let's say I had like 3 years of experience and the job listing said 4 to 5 years of experience. Sometimes I just wouldn't apply because I'd be like, there's no point in wasting my time here. Like, they're not gonna like want to interview me. I'm not experienced enough. I'm looking at the the bullet points. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't think I've done enough to like stretch to these like level of qualifications. But you rightly pointed out, like, why would you just count yourself out? Like, you should at least apply and see what happens.
That's how you got your most recent job.
That is, over time, you just kept telling me that. I was like, yeah, you're right. And I applied for the position, which is my current job now. And that was like a huge level up for me in terms of like compensation, title,
seniority,
the type of work that I was doing. And so that is one area where I felt it for sure. And I think you've been a really good partner to me to like help me realize I should throw my hat in the ring for those things.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was just going to mention that too. I think I learned that hack as in like applying to roles that are above your current position, maybe a few steps above, because I remember in college, I had a friend who was very arrogant about like how skilled and how talented he was. So he applied for not a junior role, like right out of college role, because we were college students at that time. He applied for like a senior role for like security analyst or security engineer, and he got it. And he got like a $200K signed base salary offer, which was crazy.
That's insane.
And then that's where I realized that it's not really like you are the limitation to yourself. And so I think one thing when it comes to imposter syndrome on how to sometimes navigate that is to take cues from other people that don't have imposter syndrome and to internalize what they do and how they act, both in a work setting but in life. And I think that teaches you to have more self-worth. Like seeing him be confident enough to apply to his own position and actually get it taught me that in life you can just reach for things that are above you. because you do deserve it. When you do get it, it actually proves the point that you do deserve it. And I think that's what happened with you. I was like, there's no reason. You qualify for every other thing except the work experience. Like, why wouldn't you apply for it? And you got it. And, you know.
Yeah, I think something you told me back then is let someone else tell you no. Don't tell yourself no. Like, don't take yourself out of the running, right?
Yeah.
Like, let someone else do that for you before you just like shut the door on yourself, you know? So I think that's a good advice to anyone. Just go for it. And if you get the position, that means you are worthy of it, right? So.
Welcome to everyone's favorite part of the video, intermission snack time. Today's intermission snack is dun da 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 something
Poppin', cooking.
If you guys have seen the TikTok where you try to make these pseudo foods, but they're actually like jellies and candies, but it's like a little DIY. We got the sushi pack for today.
I was actually saying it's perfect that we're doing this as the snack for the imposter syndrome episode, because these are basically imposters. They look like sushi, but they're actually candy. So
also, if you guys haven't noticed, we sometimes film intermission after the episode.
What? No, it's always the same day that we do it, and then we just switched the outfits today.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Right, just kidding.
Yeah.
We also kind of get some more clarity after, because I was like watching the episode back and I realized we conflated imposter syndrome and feeling like you don't belong a little bit.
Address the allegations.
Yeah, addressing the allegations.
This is an apology video for conflating imposter syndrome and just the general feeling of not belonging. We're so sorry.
No, but I think it's like very easy in my head for those two to like flip or like to be intermixed when I use it. So I feel like throughout the episode I kind of talk about not belonging, but then I misrepresent that as imposter syndrome. So if any of you guys picked that up in the episode, my sincere apologies.
I also did that too, I think. I think it's easy to, because I think imposter syndrome is a version of just feeling like you don't belong, but it's like a very specific version of it. I feel like we were kind of just mixing the two, but I think they're very related.
Yeah,
you know?
No, I agree they're related. So just wanted to point that out. But anyways, we have now opened our Poppin' Cookin' pack, and it is just all these different bundles of
rice candy powder is what it's called.
So I was on this Reddit thread asking what are some tips to overcome imposter syndrome, and one of the top voted Reddit comments in this was, someone told me that if you have imposter syndrome, it means that you're not going to be overconfident and cocky. It also means that you understand the seriousness of the work. I suspect that all people I've worked with and that I respect feel like imposters all the time. And this one has 77 likes on a thread about imposter syndrome. And I personally feel like there's some element of truth in that, where if you do have imposter syndrome, it probably means that you are maybe slightly more critical of yourself, but it also pushes you to do better in your job. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
I got distracted because I was supposed to do it to line and I like overdid it.
So okay. So that is the first.
I have like literally no value add to this conversation right now.
This is a little bit of a chaotic intermission. I really thought we could multitask with reading some insightful tips, but also making this.
My brain too small for this right now.
I don't know how this is gonna go.
I feel like my take on that comment is I agree with them, but I feel like that is just more so like semantics. Like you're just framing it a different way, but it actually means two different things. Like imposter syndrome is called imposter syndrome because it's a negative feeling that maybe it's not the most helpful for you to have. There's a difference between being humble for good reasons and just not being like too egotistical. And I think the other side of that is putting yourself down beneath other people in a way that might be detrimental to yourself or cause you more anxiety than you should have in your position, because you do deserve to be there. And so I like agree largely with that comment and the sentiment of that comment. But I also feel like there's like some distinction that's not being made on like what the connotation of imposter syndrome is. It's like being too humble in a way that hurts yourself.
Also, very briefly, we have our rice cooked and our omelet being made.
So this next comment says, the cure to imposter syndrome is to remember that your job is to figure it out, not to know it.
I think this one's a good tip because imposter syndrome happens a lot in career, and part of why I feel like personally that I felt imposter syndrome in the past is because I feel like I have not known how to do things, and that causes me to feel like I'm behind in a way. I think this one's a good reminder, just that you don't always need to have things figured out in order to be qualified for something. And especially in jobs, you are onboarded to learn and grow with a company and not necessarily come on just to like do one specific thing.
What this made me think of is a good tip, I think, for the working world, which is that you shouldn't act like you know something if you don't know it. An example of this is like, I think in interviews, I really just came in with the false expectation or understanding that if someone asks me a question and I don't know the answer, I kind of have to like try to act like I do, or just like try to say something that makes sense to them, even if I don't really know what I'm talking about. And what I found in my interviews over the years is that it's actually the opposite. When someone asks me something and I try to reply in a way that sounds smart, but I don't really know what I'm talking about, it actually comes off worse. And that's actually not what they're looking for in the interview. It's like, if you don't know what you're being asked, you need to clarify questions, or you need to ask them more deeply about something and extract more information from them. And that's how they know that you are someone who likes to figure out problems and is able to figure out problems. And I didn't get that for a while, so I feel like that's why I had a lot of like poor interviews earlier on in my career, is because I just thought I had to know stuff coming in, and it was a bad reflection on me if I just didn't know right off the bat. But actually, like, you're not expected to know everything.
I think that's actually a great tip, because I remember when I did my an interview in college, I really thought I had bombed. This was like a very important interview for me, and I really thought I bombed the interview because there was one question that I didn't really know how to approach. And so I kind of just flat out told the interviewer, like, I don't know exactly how to do this, but here's what I'm thinking, and here's how I'm like trying to think of a solution. And even though I didn't get the answer in the end, that reflected well on me, just because it allowed them to see how I think and not necessarily just like the end solution that I come up with.
I think school trains us to think that we need to know the answer, like it's a test or something. But in the interviews, it's not actually like a binary, do you know this or do you not know this? It's more like, do you know how to work together, like come to that solution, or like at least find ways to try to tackle the problem.
I didn't realize how distracting it would be to have to be making food in the middle of like talking.
Yeah, I feel like I'm saying all these things that sound interesting to me or like insightful, and then
all you see is like me just like being so distracted.
You're just like following instruction, trying to like figure this out, and then I'm like, did I say something wrong? Last thing I'll say on that is one of my coworkers told me that they were interviewing for another company, and one thing that helped them when they got their offer was that actually they got feedback that they really liked when this person told them, I don't know the answer, but here are some questions that maybe I would ask you to like try to learn more, because I really don't know anything about this. And she said that they told her that it actually won her a lot of brownie points because she was willing to admit that she didn't know something. And I think it's actually not so common in a lot of interviewees to have that trait, that you're like willing to admit that you don't know something.
I think in interviews that I've actually done better in, I've admitted weakness, and I think that's something that not a lot of people are willing to do, especially when you don't have the job just yet.
Yeah, in my case, I don't admit the weakness because I don't have any, which I know is like really rare for a person, but if you just trust me, that is the type of person that I am.
Right.
So these don't apply to me, but like I'm trying to just put myself in the shoes of the viewer. So
it must be so hard being perfect.
Well, it's actually not hard at all. That's why it's easy for me to be perfect. Yeah. Should I try to take over or something?
Yeah, you can take over.
What is happening here?
That's the seaweed.
Oh my God, I can't comprehend this.
So this next one is try to adopt a student mentality. You will always be learning and you'll always be improving. Focus on your growth and projects. Relish in the things that you're learning that you didn't know before, because each day you grow. And this is kind of similar to the one before the last tip, but I think there's a lot of merit in remembering that we are students throughout our life, and there's always going to be things that we don't know and things that we're in the position to learn for. I think in my early career, I thought that the learning was complete by the time you finish college. And then once you are post-college, you're actually working, and that's when you actually need to implement the skills you learn. But life is a journey, and life is just a long set of schooling where you learn about different things and different parts about yourself as well. And I think this is a really great comment to tell you and remind you that just because you don't know something doesn't mean you can't learn.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to say. I also was listening to an interview with Justin Chan the other day, who is a filmmaker, and he was talking about how like he always still tries to go into every experience with like a student and a learner's mindset. Even though at this point he's done a lot of really successful projects, he doesn't go into projects like, oh, yeah, I've done this or that, and like try to like rest on his laurels, so to speak. And he's found that that's really helped him to like improve, and he's always wanting to be curious and like learn, because there's endless things to learn, you know, like you as a person can never know everything. And so I think taking that learner's mindset and like having that humility is really important, no matter like what stage of life you're in. And I think some of the best people who are even like further along in their careers and really successful still live by that approach. So I like that comment a lot. The one hot take I will say about that, and I know you're so distracted right now and you don't even process what I'm saying right now because you're just so distracted by making this, and I understand that. I get it. It requires a lot of concentration.
It's just like put the green packet into pocket A, put the orange packet into pocket B, use the dropper to put the orange packet juice into.
It's the meme of the guy sweating as he's looking at the 2 red buttons to push and he doesn't know which one. That's what you are right now. Anyways, as I love my hot takes, I will give a hot take on this one where it's saying like, be a learner, like be a student. I'll make sure you always have the student learners like mindset. I agree with that, but I would also say don't prioritize learning over money. The reason I thought of this from the Reddit comment is earlier on in my career, when I would interview for places, they would be like, what are you prioritizing right now? I would be like, oh, I'm really just prioritizing learning. I want to learn as much as possible. I'm so early in my career. I want to just explore the different things that I don't know yet and want to get exposure to different aspects of the business. That's what I used to tell these interviewers, which is a good thing. You know, like you should try to learn a lot. But I think I prioritized that a little too much, where I was thinking of like, oh, what's the best learning opportunity? But I wasn't prioritizing the money aspect as much. So I was like, oh, this is kind of a pay cut, and I probably could like maybe hold out, for other interviews and like try to get a different job. I was basically okay passing up money where I didn't need to pass up money, just for the sake of learning and growth because I was early in my career. But I think that like kind of stunted some of my potential earning growth or my career progression in a way, even though I did learn a lot at that company that I went to.
Do you think you had any imposter syndrome in that time, as in like you were willing to take a pay cut because you wanted to start as someone very, very new in an industry and you felt like you deserved that pay cut because you were new?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I definitely did. I think I talked about this in a different episode about career. Did that get cut maybe? Is that the 9 to 5 one?
I don't remember. It might have been the 9 to 5 actually.
It might have been in the episode that we tried to film and then the footage got destroyed, or the audio got destroyed.
Yeah, it was unfortunate we had to discard 2 episodes.
So my first job was a stint in consulting, and I wanted to move out of that into tech. And at my consulting job, I felt like I wasn't learning a lot of transferable skills. It wasn't like management consulting where you have a lot of different business skills, so to speak, that you learn. It was a different type of consulting where I don't think it was as transferable. So I felt like 2 years into my career, I really had no hard skills that I had to show for it. And I wanted to move to a tech company, but I was really unconfident in my abilities. So I felt like I was starting from scratch, even though I did have 2 years of work experience. I was actually seeing some people like my tenure at the company move on to better paying jobs, pay raises, promotions. I was at a point where I'd been job hunting for like months on end and I wasn't getting anything. I'd get to a ton of final rounds and then end up getting rejected. And so I was like, oh, okay, like I guess maybe like I'm not up to par and I'm just not good enough here yet. And so I guess that's kind of imposter syndrome in a way. Because of that feeling that I didn't have enough work experience that was relevant to the tech industry, I was willing to take a pay cut for a different job. And like in retrospect, maybe shouldn't have. And in the end, it did work out. After that second job, I went to a better paying job like I hoped I would. But ultimately, I think I did take that pay cut to learn, to grow, to get my foot in the door, where I feel like I could have maybe stuck it out at the first company for a little longer and maybe just skipped a year of pay cut to get to the next level. And rather than that, maybe took 3 more months, 6 more months of job searching and like gotten the promotion through a different job.
I think in career especially, it's really easy to feel like you don't have the right skill set to do a certain job or role. And then you end up just making decisions that don't necessarily benefit yourself just because you feel like you're deserving or not deserving of something.
Yeah, maybe you should like actually strive to feel like an imposter in the next role that you get, because it's so good that you're like, holy shit, how did I get this?
Yeah.
And that's how you know you're like moving up in life in the right way.
Is that toxic to say?
I think it's just like a tongue-in-cheek way to say like maybe it's a sign that you're in the right place or pushing yourself in the right way or progressing beyond where you currently were or you previously were recently, and that's a sign that you're doing well. So the last comment that we have here is, it takes time, but you will eventually realize how shit everyone else is at their jobs.
I think that's a good one too, because sometimes it's hard to see when other people are struggling or other people are feeling imposter syndrome too. And I think a lot of people do feel imposter syndrome, even though it's not talked about very much. Obviously, there are going to be people that don't feel imposter syndrome ever, that are very confident about everything that they're doing. It's important to remember that we're all kind of going through the same thing. And in your job, there's always growth and progression. And some people are just not very good at their jobs too, which is what this Reddit statement is saying.
I'm sorry, I had a joke that I was thinking of that I wanted to say before I go into this Reddit thread thing. Do you think fusilli pasta has imposter syndrome? Or no?
No.
Oh.
I think it's perfect.
It's like I'm pasta. Impasta.
I'm pasta?
Impasta syndrome. Anyways, okay. Sorry for that joke.
You are so fine.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, I think we are finally done with our little sushi platter.
Sushi.
So we have a fish roe ball sushi. We have tuna sushi, and we have egg sushi, all of which are candies.
It's actually just candy, but...
Yeah. Should we start with the egg one?
Yes. Omakase at home.
Omakase DIY.
Cheers.
Cheers. Do you like it?
I love it.
I really don't
I think it tastes great.
I think I don't really like the texture of the rice, but the flavor itself is pretty good. I think it's kind of like just like a fruity flavor. All right, we got the tuna. Cheers. I like the first one more. This one tastes more medicinal.
I like the first one more too, but they're both pretty good.
And I
You
think
can
I
have
was
the roe ball one.
I think I was supposed to make 2 of these.
It's okay. You worked so hard for it.
Well, this one's the prettiest. I'm gonna try to eat half of this, and then I'll give you the half.
It's okay. No, you can just have it. Just have it. Have it.
My ranking is the egg, the tuna, and then the fish roe.
I liked the fish roll one, the egg one, and then the tuna one.
What would you rate this?
I think for taste, a 7 out of 10, but the effort level takes 3 out of it, so a 4 out of 10. Actually, but I do like it. I don't know. It's fun. I'll round up to 5. 5 out of 10.
I think overall a 4 for me because of the effort, and the flavor isn't the best candy I've had.
But then the fun factor maybe adds a little back in.
What about like the stress factor of having to read Reddit threads while also making this?
Yeah, that's true. So I think it balances out. I think that's it for this segment, folks, unless you had anything else.
That's all. Back to our regularly
Back to the
scheduled program.
episode. So I guess like we covered like the cultural aspect, the financial aspect, the professional aspect. One thing we haven't talked about is the social aspect of feeling imposter syndrome. And I think relating to career and what that means for our lives, it does bleed over into the social aspect of things, especially as we've experienced, at least living in New York. A lot of like our friends from college are definitely doing the traditional route, which is great. They're doing the like consulting, finance, tech route, which is pretty common here. But what I would say is for someone who's maybe less traditional in the career that they're pursuing, it can create some weird like imposter syndromes in a social context. And I think especially with the potential like stigma of the things that we do, which is like content creation, for people who are a little more traditionally career minded, I don't know, maybe we're just self-conscious about it or like paranoid about it, but we do feel weird sometimes telling them about like our social media thing. We just kind of downplay it like it's a hobby or just kind of like it's a little thing that we do. But between us, we're like, we think about it, talk about it all the time. It's like a very serious endeavor for us. But I think we do feel a lot of like, oh, we're not legit enough, we're not serious enough in these things that we're doing to warrant us like kind of talking about it more seriously to these people.
Yeah, sometimes when it comes to content creation and my full-time job, I feel like I'm dipping my feet in both pools. And so because of that, I never feel fully legitimate in both. So when I'm working corporate, I think I mentioned in my first episode, I don't have all the time in the world to give to my corporate job. But at the same time, I don't have all the time in the world to give to my content job. So when I'm talking to people who are full-time corporate, want to climb the ladder as soon as possible, get promoted as quickly as possible, I have a hard time feeling like I am on the equal playing field as them, because I don't know exactly how to validate my self-worth when I'm not actively climbing the corporate ladder so fast. And as a creator too, like when I'm around full-time content creators and they're talking about all the great things they're doing, all the cool things they're working on, and I just don't have the time to be working on stuff, I also feel like I'm not a full-fledged content creator. I also don't feel like I can bear the title of being a content creator. A lot of the times, like you pointed this out a lot when we would be at content creator events, I'd always introduce myself first as a software engineer and then as a content creator, which is really confusing in those environments because, you know, no one really cares what you do full time.
Yeah, you're just like limiting yourself socially by being like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm a software engineer, which nothing wrong with that. But in those events, it's like everyone's a creator there and you're there because you're a creator also.
Yeah.
But then they'd be like, what do you do? And then she'd be like, I'm a software engineer. And then they'd be like, oh.
So do you work here?
It's
Or like,
yeah,
is
why are
this
you here then?
the...
Basically, that was the sentiment. And so I've tried to just make her be like, no,
Yeah.
I'm just a content creator, you know?
Well, it's because I never felt like 100% like I was one, because I didn't do that full time. And so I always felt like I had to explain like, oh, you know, I don't post as much, or I'm not as big because I don't have all the time to give to it, which may not be true. But I think I always felt like I needed to justify. I think that's where, you know, you have imposter syndrome. It's like you always need to feel like you're justifying your position in anything. Like you're justifying why you don't have this or why you can't do this. Like you're just like, oh, I'm here because of this reason, but I also have this other thing that's distracting me from that. So I think in the creator space, I have a lot of imposter syndrome that I've been working to like get out of. But then on the work front too, because I'm a creator, sometimes I don't, you know, necessarily know how to merge those two worlds.
I guess we're kind of like delving more into like the content creation side of like the imposter syndrome. Before we get fully into that, on the social front, I guess, I think sometimes we do feel some sort of social aspect of like being imposter syndrome. So I'm wondering if you felt that way either at school while we were in college or post college now that we're in New York and a lot of the same people are living in the city here.
I think career elitism is really real when it comes to Ivy Leagues, because there's like the three traditional paths, right? It's like consulting, finance, tech, and then I guess medicine, and I guess law. But it's like all the conventionally well-paying jobs with a very clear path of success. And I think whenever I talk to people now, again, going into like the content thing, I don't think for some people, especially in like that space of high accomplished corporate workers, I don't think content creation seems like a real legitimate career, or at least that's how I perceive it. Maybe that's my imposter syndrome.
Like a respectable one.
Right. And so like when I talk about my content, I always feel less than the people who are talking about their progression, like they're getting promoted to like senior associate at their firm, or they just graduated law school and they're going to go work at this amazing like law firm. And I always shorten my conversations. That's another indicator when I feel like I have imposter syndrome, is I like to shorten the conversations on me, because I don't really like to talk about myself because it feels like I'm a little beneath other people. So I'd rather not talk about myself. And I feel like in school too, if you ever had an idea for like a non-traditional career path, I felt like it was hard to talk to other people about that. I think a big part of my imposter syndrome stems from like not being a full-time creator, because when you're around a majority of full-time creators, which now more and more, because more and more people are going full-time, it feels weird because there's certain things that I kind of just need to quote unquote miss out on. Like I can't do editing sessions with people during the work week. I can't grab coffee during the work week.
These are things that full-time creators do.
Yeah, like full-time creators, their schedule is not clear. Like they do spend time filming, but it's more self-directed. And I don't have the liberty of that. And so I feel always a little bit less when I have to be like, sorry, I can't like make this, or I don't have the time to, like, can we reschedule? I'm only free on the weekends, blah, blah, blah. But I think I always, when I first used to meet bigger content creators or creators I looked up to, I always positioned myself as a fan to them. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then at influencer events, it always meant that they would never give me any respect, because I would always be like, oh my God, I'm such a big fan of your content.
You're like trying to compliment them, but you're putting yourself beneath them to their perspective at least. Yeah.
And so I think I had a lot of imposter syndrome, because obviously I'm a consumer of content as well. And so when I see other people who are creators that I watch, I sometimes just I forget that I'm also a creator. You know, I'm a lot better at that now. Like I think I'm like pretty chill on other creators. But when I first started, I had a lot of imposter syndrome because I didn't see myself as a creator. Like I never called myself a creator up until like a few years into it. And it felt always weird for me to label myself as that, because I guess I wasn't doing it, and I'm not doing it full time. So
yeah, I imagine it's even harder because it's the content creation space where people can be a little more shallow with like numbers and like your image and clout chasing basically, which kind of relates to like the other episode that we have on content creation about like how shallow of an industry it can be.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's just way more prone to situations where you might feel like imposter basically.
Yeah. Have you felt imposter syndrome in the creator space? Because at this point you've gone to some events too and like met creators and been in the space and also met like some creators that I know as well.
I think more recently I actually haven't felt too much like an imposter, but I think it's because I've numbed myself a little bit to it through going to events with you before I did anything with content.
Oh yeah, you'd be my plus
and
one.
I think just like meeting other people through you who maybe didn't take me that seriously, and it wasn't malicious, like I don't blame them for it. If they're at an event with a ton of other people and everyone else is creators, like yeah, you probably don't want to talk to me, like random like boyfriend, right? So like I totally get that, but if you're in those situations as the boyfriend, it's not very fun.
Yeah.
But I think those situations kind of like numbed me to it and like led me to expect situations where I might not be as like highly regarded or respected or like people wanting to talk to me. I mean, people are nicer to me as a creator now, also not malicious. I think it's just a natural thing. When those situations still inevitably happen, I think I'm a little less like peeved about it. But I also haven't been in enough settings yet, I think, to have felt those things necessarily. I don't think I've been challenged in that way yet, so that might change as I like meet more people who are like quote unquote bigger.
Yeah, that's fair. There's one more thing on imposter syndrome in the creator space that I wanted to talk about, because in real life, this doesn't ail me as much, but then as a creator, it does. I wear glasses, and I don't know if that's like other people that wear glasses can relate with me, but when you wear glasses, there's just some amount of like, it just labels you as a certain type of person, like nerdy a little bit. And in the creator space, you tend to meet more girls that are like well put together, like very girly, very like beautiful models and it girlies. And I feel like sometimes just because of the way I look or the way I choose to present, I feel out of place, you know? Like I feel like, why didn't I put on my contacts? Why didn't I wear a dress? Like why didn't I look this certain way to like fit into the archetype of a creator? And I think that affected me a lot earlier on. Nowadays, I'm more like, you know, whatever. Like I'm older, I have more problems to worry about. But I always felt some sort of imposter syndrome in just the way that I looked. From a very superficial perspective, I just never felt like I was it-girly enough. It-girly, is that the right term?
Yeah, I guess that's like, maybe it's not the same thing, but I've heard girls who are like more tomboyish say something similar.
Oh yeah.
It's like they feel like they're not like girly enough to be in certain, like to be with hanging out with other girls. I think what you're saying is like a variation of that type of feeling, right?
Yeah, I think it takes a lot to have like strong conviction in who you are and not feel affected by how other people are. One thing I wanted to say about imposter syndrome is part of why imposter syndrome, I think, is more prevalent in adulthood than in childhood maybe, is because when you're a child and you're going through the stages of life, most of the people you surround yourself with are kind of on the same playing field. They're roughly the same age, been going through the same things that you've been going through, taking roughly the same classes, and probably presented with similar opportunities. But then when you're an adult, you're up against people that have many more years of experience doing whatever you're doing, probably come from very different socioeconomic brackets or different worlds, like countries, and have different work experiences or experiences in other things. Probably in the creator space, if we're going back to the talk about being superficial, as an adult, I'll probably meet way more models than I would being a child growing up. And so I think the opportunities to compare yourself are a lot more when you're an adult, and the times where you can say, oh, this other person has way more qualifications than I do for this job, or there's probably a billion other candidates for this listing that I'm applying for. I think that happens more frequently because now your pool of competition, quote unquote, is like much higher. And so in a workspace, I think that's what has caused most of my imposter syndrome. It's comparing myself to more senior engineers, or comparing myself to content creators that have been doing content for like years, or content creators that are literally models, like just different spaces where I feel like I come in contact with way more people that I can feel less against.
Yeah, it's like the aspects of life that are competition are becoming wider as an adult. I guess you're just opening yourself up more to feeling like an imposter.
Yeah.
That's a really good insight, actually. One point earlier about the gendered part of it that you brought up was like you as a girl. One just like, I think, funny tidbit that I feel sometimes is like, as a guy, I feel like an imposter as a dude, because I hang out so much with you. a girl.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the way I feel like I am sometimes is like with you, I'm like, hey, I'm James. That's how I like come off in my head. But then
That's literally how he talks to me.
but then when I talk to guys, I'm like, I have to like drop my register
You're
a
like,
little.
bro,
Like,
dude.
yo, what's up,
Yo,
man?
man.
Like, dap up. Like, good to see you, man. I say man a lot. I just say stuff that maybe I don't always say. So I feel like an imposter as a guy, maybe, because I'm just hanging around this lovely lady here. But that means I feel like my mannerisms tend to be more like a girl's. Like, not you doing this, or like, she ate you up. Like, stuff like that. I say that because of her.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like it goes from like, hey, I'm James, to like, yo, I'm James. What's up? So I think that's a funny like gendered thing.
He also has a different voice when he talks to Moose.
Don't even bring that up. I talk so weird to Moose. I have like the weirdest baby voice to Moose.
It's so cute.
Yeah, I'm never gonna do it. If any footage of me talking to Moose gets out there, I'm ending it.
Thank you for sharing that tidbit about your masculinity.
Yeah, no problem.
I wonder if other guys can relate to, like other guys in long-term relationships with women that are more feminine and that brings out their feminine side. I'm sure it's a
Probably.
common experience.
Probably, yeah. This isn't really that related, but I guess it's more like the acting more masculine thing.
Yeah.
I've heard like gay guys on TikTok talk about their experience going to barbers, because they'll go to a barber and then they'll feel weird like talking like they normally do, because it's more like feminine. So instead of talking like they normally would, they'll go in as a straight dude essentially. Like, instead of like, hey, I'm Josh, it's more like, hey, I'm Josh, what up? Like, yeah, can I get a fade, please? But really on the TikTok they're like, but I'm talking like this, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's not the same, but
That's
it's kind
so
of
funny.
like acting masculine, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I guess we all kind of do some form of social chameleoning in life.
Yeah.
Around the types of people that we think other people are, which is why I think the creator space is interesting. There's so many archetypes of people in the creator space. I feel the need to conform sometimes.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think the good last topic that we should talk about is how do we navigate imposter syndrome? And there's no end all be all solution to it, but I do think there's better ways to approach imposter syndrome. One of it, I think, is like positive self-talk and being able to celebrate wins. I feel like I talked about this tip in some video. It might have been the episode about confidence. I definitely think positive self-talk teaches you to kind of get out of the overthinking about your self-worth sometimes.
Yeah, I think a lot of just small actions for yourself helps you to understand that you need to have self-confidence. I'm like trying to piece together like the takeaways in my head. I think one of them is like what you said before, which is like, are you in the right environment for yourself too? Maybe a tip for overcoming imposter syndrome is you actually remove yourself from the environment where it makes you feel like you have imposter syndrome.
Doesn't always work, because with work you can't do that, but then other times with like social, like creator space, I could just not go to some events.
I think the second thing is also something that I've thought about throughout this discussion that we've had is you might feel like an imposter if you are kind of a person with different
interests and the things that you care about and want to do in life, right?
Yeah, so I think if you are a person with those different interests and different facets of who you are, you're not just this one note or one character, that will open you up to feeling like you're an imposter because you have more complexity to who you are. Some people do have more like singular interests, which is fine too, but that means they will not feel as much like imposter syndrome
because they spend more of their time investing into that and thinking about it.
So that's like
excelling,
their core identity maybe.
Yeah.
But you, in your core identity, you might have like 2 or 3 things rather than one, which doesn't mean you're like any less of those things. But I think it does mean you might feel like that because you're comparing yourself to someone who has like the one core thing to your 3 things.
Yes. So I think comparing yourself to other people is probably the most toxic thing you can do when it comes to imposter syndrome, because you'll always be comparing yourself upwards unless you're trying to actively be like, oh, I'm so much better than this person. You might compare yourself down. But when you're comparing yourself up, you're always going to feel like you're not worthy and you don't have enough compared to other people. And everyone's situation is different. So comparing yourself to other people isn't always fair to yourself. So I think anytime I feel like I'm starting to compare myself to other people, I just nip it in the bud. I start like talking to you or distracting myself or doing something else.
Sometimes it's not even comparing up, it's just comparing, period.
Yeah, just comparing.
Because a lot of the time you're not comparing apples to apples.
Yeah.
You're like comparing a cat to a dog, you know?
Yeah. Lisa just really wants pets right now. Oh my goodness.
My
Did you
God.
guys see that? If you're not watching the video, open your video right now and see what's
you're
going
really
on.
missing out on the experience of a lifetime. Moose just plopped down next to me.
We're going to start monetizing Moose and shipping him out to our viewers so that you guys can experience what we are experiencing right now.
Again, yeah, we mentioned this in another video, but
he keeps all proceeds.
Moose keeps all proceeds. He does have a service where if you pay him, he will keep you company. Maybe you'll get to cuddle him if you pay for that. We definitely don't keep all the proceeds ourselves. Wink, 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 wink. Listen to that purr. Listen to that V8 engine. A lot of moose power.
Anyways, I feel like we talked a lot about imposter syndrome, our experiences, how to navigate it. We are going to turn off the camera now so we can play with Moose.
Yeah, Moose is more important right now. So whatever wisdom we had left to impart to you guys,
it's gone.
It's gone. It's lost in our heads.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah. Let us know how you guys have dealt with imposter syndrome, whether you want us to talk about it more. We'd love to engage with what you guys have to say.
Yeah, and thank you guys as always for listening, and stay for the bloopers. Bloopers are so fun. I feel like no one ever watches it.
And shout out to all the Juicy J's out there. If you're new here, Juicy J's is what I call the people who are supporters of me on this channel, on this podcast. I feel like I haven't done a good job shouting you guys out every episode, but I do really appreciate you guys. Solidarity with all the Juicy J's out there.
And
thank you for being here.
With the soju shotties.
You didn't sound very confident there.
Sorry. In solidarity with the
you
soju shotties.
You felt imposter syndrome about how you measure up to the Juicy J's.
I was comparing
and for
to
good
you.
reason, we are much better.
I don't need to compare with you.
Actually, I guess the Juicy J's are a subset of soju shotties.
Yeah, unless they're completely separate
camp.
cult.
I don't. Let us know, you guys. If you're a Juicy J, do you consider yourself also a soju shotty, or are you like in my camp versus her camp?
We need a Venn diagram of how this looks. Like, what overlap is there of soju shotties versus Juicy J's? Yeah. Anyways, thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Bloopers.
It's bloopers.
Tappy tappy.
Tappy tappy.
I'm so happy.
The memory card ran out of memory, but we can wrap this up.
We can wrap.
Oh,
wrap
go
it
for
up.
it. Go.
Yeah. Dap me up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And let's go play some golf.
What?
Like Jared Goff.
What?
Top me off. All right, that's it. Ouch. Moosey. Oh my gosh, Moosey. Oh my gosh.
Let him sit.
Hello.
Let him sit. Oh my goodness.
That I need to be more manly. Whoa.
Say that
again? One thing that I feel sometimes is that I like feel. Is he done?
I don't know.
I don't think he's done. The way my mind would. We're always like, how do we be more efficient with our time? And yet we're doing poppin' cooking, the most time consuming snack.